This video made possible by the Global Innovation Exchange. Visit gixnetwork.org to learn more.
There we go. I'm Jim Davenport. I'm a research scientist at UW just across town, and I'm going to talk to you for 5 minutes about a project, an update to a project I did 6 years ago called the United States of Starbucks. It's very apropos here in Seattle. My day job, or my night job as it were, is studying large data sets from big telescopes like this being constructed in Chile, looking for signs of how stars change over small and long time scales. I'd love to talk to you about how analytics plays into that. But instead, I want to talk about a side thing I did during graduate school, a blog that I wrote working on creativity and question answering. Here's an example of a post I wrote. Does smiling in your profile photo improve your performance as a quarterback? Even when we apply machine learning, the answer is no. Maybe reliably. When you're getting a PhD in astronomy, there's like one tool in your arsenal you can't forget, and that's coffee. And that's, of course, a natural thing here in Seattle. And so one of the very first explorations I did for my blog was studying the coffee shops all across UW's campus. Now, this is a slightly out-of-date map, but if we drop down little pins for every location on campus and map out walking distances, we can see that, thankfully, basically nowhere on campus are you more than 2 minutes from a cup of coffee. And we can't talk about coffee in Seattle without talking about the 12,000-pound gorilla just down the road, Starbucks, right? Explosive growth through the last 30 years. And it started making me think about how are we distributed around coffee shops, and I needed a source of data to go after it. Now, here's my call to action. 6 years ago, it was a little bit tedious to go get this data, scraping it off various websites. Today, we can hop on GitHub, and somebody's got a repo you can just clone. But if you are a big company that has lots of fans, put some of your data online. We like to play with it. Here's the United States of Starbucks. This is the location of more than 10,000 coffee shops, company-owned and franchised locations throughout the United States. Now, I've connected this with a familiar wire mesh to many of you called Delaunay triangulation. Okay, I'm a research scientist, so I have to bring a little math into the room. Now, this is the set of non-overlapping triangles that connect every location, and you can kind of invert this triangular map into what we call the Voronoi diagram, which should come up there. And this is the sort of equal-spaced cells, marking the sort of regions around each coffee shop. And so you can see there are big voids where there are no coffee shops. Nice features like I-5, population centers like cities are all well outlined. Now, this kind of analysis, of course, has been done before. This is, I think, the best example, which is Stephen von Vorley's United States of McDonald's, where he finds that the furthest you can get from McDonald's is somewhere in Nevada, and it's something like 120 miles or something. So we can play the same game with Starbucks, and indeed, many people in this room, many companies in this room do this kind of thing for a living, figuring out where to place locations. So we can look at this triangulation, or we can actually use the Voronoi diagram, and we can find what we think is the lowest density spot, the furthest place from a Starbucks. These are contenders. Here's 3 examples. There's a place in Eastern Oregon, a place in the Dakotas, and then what I think is the least caffeinated spot in America, somewhere in northern Montana. Now, this tends to be a sort of an interesting place. This is Macomb County, if you're not familiar with northern Montana. I love that this is their official state county seal. I think it's needlepoint. Now, the population of Macomb County is about 1,900 people. It only has one city, Circle, Montana, and the population of Circle is about the same as the people in this room. So it makes sense that they don't have a Starbucks, but it is very far from Seattle, both culturally and geographically, especially when we've spent the week talking about urban environments and high-density places and cutting-edge technology. Macomb County feels very far away. So it makes me think, how are we distributed around these coffee shops? That's a long ways away. Let's use another source of open-source data, open source at least for now, the US Census data, and let's count the number of people that are distributed around each of these extent locations. So you draw little circles, we count up populations. This is the kind of thing that we would do in astronomy, counting populations of stars, let's say. And we get what I think is the most elegant, I, of course, as a scientist, think this is the most beautiful diagram in the whole talk. This nice cumulative distribution of the population as a function of distance from Starbucks. Nothing's surprising here if you think about it. This is a statement about urbanization. People live near these urban centers. In fact, 80% of Americans, 81% of Americans live in urbanized environments. 80% of Americans live within 20 miles of a Starbucks. And so let me finish with one maybe hopeful thought. In a time when great divisiveness and sort of wild politics, red and blue, are driving us apart, let's think about the lattes that bind us together, that they're stronger than those forces that might drive us apart, that 80% of you can go get a pumpkin spice latte. Thank you.